Hi, I'm Mordechai Turchiner, and a friend of mine is a Torah-observant Jew, as well as a libertarian, very suspicious of government, and a contrarian, very suspicious of whatever the community consensus is on any given day. So it comes as no surprise that he's been sending me articles about the reaction to COVID-19 being overblown, about the damage to the economy and people's jobs versus the health of the minority of the community that's most vulnerable, about how only 0.4% are truly in danger, about the cure being worse than the disease, and so on. And I think from the standpoint of Judaism, it's legitimate to say that in certain circumstances, we don't destroy the economy even to save some lives. But I think the application here is incorrect, and I actually gave a long class relevant for this topic several months ago. The link will be in the description below. But here's a digest of what I think are the most relevant issues. First, there are two classic sources in the Gemara that show we might put personal finances ahead of the needs of others. One, Gemara in Gittin talks about a situation in which people are kidnapped, they're being held for ransom, but they aren't going to be killed. They're going to be sold. So we don't force the Jewish community to pay more than a fixed sum to free them because of durka de tzibura, because we want to make sure that you don't press the community to spend all of its resources for them. The Chasam Sofer explains the financial survival of the community is considered a matter of life and death in its own right. Second source, Gemara Nedarim, as explained by the Ran there, gives the following scenario. You have a river. The river has a community living upstream and a community living downstream. The community that's upstream is doing just fine with its water supply. They want to use the water supply for non-life and death needs, laundry. The community downstream wants the water for drinking water. There isn't enough for both. Says at least one view in the Gemara there, the community upstream is allowed to use the water for its less dire needs. And as noted by some commentators, community downstream can choose to move if their drinking water situation isn't good. The community upstream is empowered to use the water as it chooses. So we see here philosophically that we don't force people to give up their financial health or their non-life and death health in order to save others from harm. And on the practical level, as Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, a leading halachic authority in Israel, has noted, we don't require that people spend all their money for every tzedakah campaign. Can you imagine if we did require that? If communities had to actually spend all their money on people's health and on saving lives? Further, Judaism recognizes the importance of maintaining the economy as well as other non-medical aspects of our community for the sake of society overall. Great authorities have ruled that a community may choose to spend money on parks and roads in order to ensure that people will want to live there, despite the fact that that will come at the cost of the medical system. So, my friend is not entirely wrong when pointing out the financial harm of quarantining in order to save the presumed minority of the population. However, there are several reasons why this doesn't apply here, and the community should continue to self-isolate, if only to save a minority from harm, even at the potential cost of an economic depression. First of all, from a purely factual perspective, I'm not clear that only a minority is at risk of harm. Even if COVID-19 is only fatal to a minority, let's say it's 0.4%, I am certainly not the expert. As I understand it, the repercussions in terms of direct health risks, as well as fallout and reduced availability of medical resources, in terms of non-fatal medical harm, and in terms of personal bereavement, extend far beyond that minority. Second, Judaism obligates the community to provide for the immediate medical needs of each member, and this is expressed in three ways. Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg noted, the community is fundamentally a set of individuals, all of whom are obligated to look after each other. We have rules like Hashavas Aveda. You have to return people's lost property to them. Certainly you have to help them save their health. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Second, Rabbi Yosef Shalom al-Yashiv noted, the community has a duty to look after the welfare of the community as a whole, to keep it functioning as a community. That's not limited to medical needs, but medical needs are certainly a factor. And then third, Rav Shabsai Rappaport argued that the community has a special duty to eliminate injustice via communal tzedakah. He writes that if people are lacking basic needs, health being one of them, that is viewed by the Torah as injustice. Now, all three of these arguments, whether you're arguing about the need to look after others as individuals, or the welfare of the community, or eliminating injustice, you could apply all of them to looking after the community's finances as well. but they do include requiring the community to look after the health of its members. Another point, even though Judaism teaches that people may cap what they spend on the needs of others, as we said before, medical needs in particular are supposed to come before other kinds of communal spending. So that Rav Zilberstein in Shiurei Torah L'Rofim notes that even if we serve social needs, health comes before luxury. Talmud Yerushalmi records an interesting conversation in which Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina and Rabbi Hoshaya Rabbah are strolling among the synagogues of Lod. And Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina comments on how his ancestors supported those synagogues, how much money my ancestors invested here. To which Rabbi Hoshaya responds, how many lives did your ancestors sink into here? They could have used that money to support people who were in need. There's even a midrash on King David describing how he stockpiled funds that would be used to build the Beis Hamikdash, to build the temple, and the midrash criticizes him. They should have used the funds instead for the needy. Further, having people self-isolate for several weeks is not the same as selling one's home or giving away all of one's money. Governments are doing a great deal to shore up economies, as well as to support the unemployed. It's far from clear that people are going to suffer life and death long-term damage from the financial fallout. I don't take it lightly, but I think it's worth taking it with a grain of salt. And finally, because we need to view the situation in context, our entire world has been having a debate about the cost of healthcare for many years. Should insurance companies, or socialized medicine where that exists, be required to pay to treat rare diseases? Should companies be able to charge as they wish for medications? Should government encourage the use of DNRs and medical assistance in dying to reduce the cost of healthcare for the community? An approach which puts the economy ahead of saving lives is also endorsing some very serious triage measures, some of which are problematic within Judaism. Torah-observant Jews should think very carefully about what they're endorsing. So in sum, my friend is correct. We have to consider financial fallout when deciding how much a community spends in order to save the lives of a limited population. That's supported in the Gemara and Gittin and Adarim that we quoted. However, that largely doesn't apply here for multiple reasons, including these 5. First, even if those who will be fatally affected are a very small minority, the illness will impact the broader community on the levels of medical resource availability, non-fatal harm, and personal loss. Second, Judaism obligates the community to provide for the immediate medical needs of each member as part of our duty to individuals and as part of our duty to society. Third, Judaism requires that communal spending prioritize healthcare before other needs, like in that Talmud Yerushalmi about the shul building. Fourth, having people self-isolate for several weeks is not the same as selling one's home or giving away all of one's money. And fifth, because putting the economy ahead of lives will also justify limiting support for treatment of rare diseases, pressure to accept DNRs, medical assistance in dying. So I think this is an important debate to have, but oversimplified arguments about bankrupting society to save 0.4% of the population don't really cut it. Thank you for watching.